Recording in progress. Okay, today on the podcast is Ellis Gore. Thanks for coming on, Ellis. The point of the podcast today is Ellis and I both gave up coffee for a month, and we wanted to reflect on what that was like for us to give up coffee.
Well, not just coffee, right? Caffeine.
Caffeine.
Right.
Caffeine in general, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I take my caffeine in many forms usually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Coffee,
now that I'm thinking
drinks,
about it,
tea,
like taurine. So,
right.
Did you give up all enes? All?
I think so. Well, I don't know what's in mushroom tea, but I definitely avoided like anything that you would normally drink to get caffeine.
Okay.
So no energy drinks, no coffee, no. I actually didn't drink or eat any chocolate either.
Okay. What sparked this was 30 days ago. I watched Joe Rogan's podcast with Michael Pollan, and he talked about giving up caffeine for 3 months. And something he said triggered this for me, which made me text Ellis and say, maybe we should do this. What he said was, I realized after not being on caffeine for a month that I didn't feel like myself. And what he realized is that his self was caffeinated. And that was like this triggering moment for me of, who am I if I'm not pumping this drug into my system every day? And I wanted to take a look at that. And I thought Ellis is the perfect person to reach out to, because you're always open to like challenging yourself.
Yeah, definitely open for an experiment. I like to remove things from my life that I use constantly or depend on, just to see how I react and see what I'm like. I tend to do a sober month every year anyways, which is similar. And I've found it really beneficial. So once you brought up the idea, I was scared at first, honestly, but I was definitely in.
How come you were scared?
Well, I got to thinking about it, and I was like, I drink coffee every day, at least 1 cup. And I have been for I was thinking about it, I'm 32 years old now, probably almost 20 years. I don't think I was drinking coffee when I was 12, but starting in high school sometime, I was probably drinking coffee every day. And I look forward to it a lot. And I also, I think I drink energy drinks now, every now and then, and have tea sometimes in the afternoon. So I was thinking, hey, it's one thing to give up booze for a month. I have that not every day, mostly on the weekends, but it's another thing to give up something that I rely on every single morning, So I was definitely scared about it a little bit, see how I'd react.
When I look at my note, so I kept a journal of probably the first 2 weeks. I kept a pretty strict journal of how was I feeling every day.
Yeah.
Because I knew I would just kind of forget over time. And when you look at the earlier journaling, I'm making some serious rationalizations. I was trying to find ways right away, right from off the bat, day 1, 2, and 3. Why is it that I can break this already? I was finding reasons to not do it, but because we did it together, it helped me stick to it.
That helped a lot. In the first week or two, when we would check in on each other, that was huge. To not to just be yo man, how you doing? This sucks, right?
Yeah, at one point you texted me, you were like, how long are we doing this for? And I was like, you're struggling today?
Yeah, man, it felt like an AA meeting or something. Just be share how you're feeling. Reach out to you're my sponsor.
Yeah, I felt the support. I also I noticed that on the weekends it was particularly hard for me, because I feel during the week I could just, what I did instead was I drank herbal tea. So I started with chamomile, and then I started to hate chamomile because it just wasn't coffee. So then I bought this thing called, it's lemon zinger herbal tea. It's rose hips and something else, and lemon peel and all this stuff. But I started to like that because it's sharp. It's got it's called Zinger. So you know how you drink your cup of coffee and you can feel it right away? It's like your
Yeah.
system is shocked. This lemon Zinger, even though it doesn't have caffeine, it was like something shocking in the morning. So I kept the ritual. And I think back of my days that I worked at the substance abuse clinic, where it's like a lot of my clients that were in recovery would tell me that it's not so much the drug they missed, but the ritual of like
Yeah.
calling their dealer, going to this place where they buy the drugs, bringing the drugs back to the place where they do the drugs. And sometimes people would talk about just having the drugs, buying the drugs and having them in their home would make them feel soothed, not even doing the drugs.
Oh, interesting.
So I
That
thought
makes a
about
lot of sense. There's a big ritualistic part of this. Yeah. It's like the Folgers thing, like best part of waking up, right? It's like Folgers in your cup. It's like something about the warmth and like the feeling of having that cup in your hand.
So I know you were texting me about like you started drinking chaga tea. We'll get to that, but my ritual was the same. Like the same mug that I drink the coffee out of. I boiled water and I poured something hot into the cup and I sat down in the same place where I drink the coffee and I drank the tea instead. And like the psychoactive stimulant never hit my body. So in the beginning It was like, well, this isn't the same, but just having that ritual was like, it like softened the blow a little bit.
Oh yeah, totally. I like the reason you just mentioned the chaga tea. The reason I found that because it was like advertised as like coffee, but not coffee, essentially. It turns out I like it, so I think I'm definitely going to like keep that in my routine. But the ritual is huge. Like you feel that comfort waking up to have that kind of like start to your day that you're used to. So to keep that, I think make things easier. But I'm curious to go back on the like the weekend versus weekday thing. Why do you think it was harder on the weekends? Because I have a theory about that, but I want to hear yours first.
Oh yeah, so I was starting to say that during the week I can start my ritual and then the day gets started. Like
Yeah,
I'm giving my daughter breakfast and then I'm looking at my emails and then I get in the car and I go to my office and the day gets started. And once I'm in it, then I'm in it. I'm in the day and I'm not thinking about it as much. In the beginning, the first 2 weeks I was, because my brain was reminding me, hey, like I would be talking to my clients and the wires weren't connecting and I was
yeah,
not finishing sentences and finishing thoughts. But the routine of like the next client shows up or I got to do the next email, it just keeps you in, you're in it.
that's
So
right.
there's not as much time to think about it. But on the weekend, I'd wake up and there's more space, there's more time to think about it.
Yeah,
And also there's just like Sunday morning, I'd get a bagel and a coffee, sit
exactly.
down, and that's just like talk about ritual.
Yeah.
Just I miss that so much.
It's funny, we're talking about like we miss it. Like it's just
It's so good.
I do
Can't
miss
wait
it.
to go back.
But it's true. I mean, it's the same. My theory is similar to that. And it was basically like during the week, I have like essentially just like anxiety about work. So I think that alone like causes me to be a little bit more alert and like wake up sooner because I'm like, oh, I have this thing I have to do this morning, some big meeting today, need to prepare for that. But like you said, on the weekends, there's space, like you sleep in a little bit, you kind of like, you know, you know, dilly dally around the house a little in the morning. You can usually have your like slow kind of morning coffee and feel a little bit more like um, it feels different on the weekends because it feels like you're enjoying the caffeine for personal reasons, whereas like in the week you're kind of using the caffeine to like perform your work, you know. So it felt like a different relationship with it on the weekends.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
But
that's a very succinct and efficient way of explaining what I think is the truth, at least for me.
yeah,
You mentioned that you have like some anxieties about work throughout the week, it made me think of what changed as far as my jitteriness and my anxiety when I stopped drinking the caffeine or consuming caffeine. But I wanted to ask you just a more general question. What would you say were the benefits of this?
Yeah, I think so. So you're about a week ahead of me. I think just over 3 weeks in. Um, the benefits, honestly, I don't think I started to notice until this past week. It took me a solid 2 weeks before I was like kind of feeling somewhat normal. But I did notice that that general like jitteriness, I mean, has all but gone away throughout the day. And I was the type of person to have like basically a cup or two in the morning, right when I wake up. And then sometimes again in the afternoon, like around 2 or 3 o'clock, I'd have like maybe a coffee, maybe an espresso, maybe a cup of tea. I don't know, it'd be something usually. So that afternoon jitteriness has gone away completely. And there's definitely like a feeling of like physically just a little bit more kind of even keel calmness throughout the day. So there's not that. And I will say in the past like week or so, I've noticed that like it's sort of transitioning to a less, I think less feelings of anxiety, which is less physical and more like, psychological and mental. But it did take a while to get there. And I think those feelings have like manifested, I hope, in the way that I interact with people somewhat. So little things, the way like you respond to someone on a call or in a conversation might be like a little bit more thoughtful or measured. I think I've noticed a difference in that in like the last week or so.
The way that you respond on a call would be more measured. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So like, let's say kind of I'm in like not I won't say a pressure situation, but like I'm under a deadline to get something done, or or I'm not like totally agreeing with someone during a conversation. I feel like my response to those situations or in those conversations would be a little bit like kinder, probably, or more thoughtful, or I would probably take a little bit more time to consider like the situation and their viewpoint and like and be a little bit more reflective on what I'm saying before I actually say it. But that, and I think that's positive for sure. But it did take like, I don't know, it took, I feel like I'm detoxing, so it takes like a while to get to that stage, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you like the inpatient systems in our society for drug abuse, they're 28-day programs. And like some
Oh,
of the
yeah.
drugs like Vivitrol, which is a opioid blocker, it's it's a shot that people take that lasts 30 days because that's like the time frame that it takes for the
Okay.
system to re-regulate and adjust. I mean, I think it's going to be a little different based on the intensity of the drug, but I mean, caffeine has its half-life of maybe 12 hours or whatever it is, where it's like the cup that you drank is out of your system. But it took me like really 2 weeks to not be thinking about it every morning for sure, and then like sometimes all day. And so yeah, detoxing, that's the word.
How did you feel in those first 2 weeks, like day to day?
I felt like our brain runs on electricity. It felt like the circuit board was misfiring. Like I
Okay.
would have to, my clients would be talking to me, and there were times when it'd be like, you have to give me a second. And it would take like 20 seconds for a thought to formulate.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm 30 days in. I'm not I'm not performing as efficiently, and I'm putting performing in quotes for people listening to just audio. I'm not performing as efficiently, meaning I'm not getting as much stuff done throughout the day. I'm just pausing because I'm trying to decide if that's true. Let me say it this way.
Hmm.
I'm 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 not thinking as fast.
Yeah.
And I think on the other side of that coin is when you say that like general calm and that
Right.
jitteriness goes away, I feel more calm than I've felt in a long time. So there's kind of a trade-off in terms of um, my brain is not functioning at the level that it used to, but it makes me think of like basically just drug use in performance enhancing drugs. Like I think about the MLB in 97 or whatever the year when like Mark McGuire and Sammy
Yeah.
Sosa were in the home run race, and they're just pumping drugs into their system. So anybody else that was competing with them, it just wasn't fair because they didn't have that same baseline. So is it like it's almost become such a Darwinistic, survival of the
Yeah.
fittest, that every single person is pumping stimulants into their system all day.
Yeah.
That if you don't do that, you're not performing as efficiently, and you could like almost fall behind because you're not doing the drug.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting, and it makes, and that's probably explains why like we were in college together. Like, you know, everyone was taking stimulants to get all their work done. You know, and but I might argue that with, okay, so maybe like the quantity of your work has maybe decreased slightly, but has the quality decreased?
No, I'm able to be I'm able to be more. So I was going to say the word focus, but maybe I haven't even thought this fully through. I would say now that my body feels more detoxed, because there is a general calmness, like maybe when there's silence in a session, because my work is being a therapist, I may
Yeah.
be able to sit with that more comfortably. Oh, and also within myself, like sitting in meditation has been much easier
Mm,
since I'm not drinking and consuming the caffeine. So maybe the quality of my time with other people and my time with myself is improving because there is just this general calmness. Like that's what I would say is a major benefit for me, is that uh, I feel more calm, and that's following me into my sessions and into my relationships.
yeah, that's good. I was going to ask you about that too, because you've got a little one at home. Has that changed in your kind of relationship there?
Well, I also, so there are a couple variables. Before I did the 30 days no caffeine, the 30 days prior to that, I'd started to go for a walk with Carmela every morning.
Okay.
I put her in the stroller. I go for a walk every morning, 20 minutes. And that in itself has done wonderful things for like my mental and physical health. So there was like, I had already made that commitment. But
Yeah.
now when I'm on that walk, now that I'm not drinking the caffeine, I would say that I'm less. Here's what's different. When I drink the caffeine, I feel like I need to use it.
Yeah.
Like it's an abundance of energy that I need to expel. So when I'm on my walk with my daughter, if I had just drank the caffeine before the walk, which I was doing, I would be using that time to solve problems for the day, or
Yeah.
solve problems for the work, like things that are coming up in work. How am I going to solve this problem administratively within my business? Or how am I going to make more money or do something more efficiently? Like I'm solving problems and getting things done in my mind while I'm on the walk. But when I
Hmm.
drink herbal tea, it's a different experience. I'm just like, wow, her hair is getting longer. And I love when she turns around and looks at me and smiles when we're walking. Like there's less of a future orientation and like getting things done with my time, because that jitteriness is energy that we use for performance. But if it's the jitteriness is not there, then yeah, it's changing my relationship with my daughter in that way.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting and sounds really positive too for your relationship with her. I mean, it makes sense though too. Like it's a stimulant, right? Like it sounds so obvious when you say it, but like when you ingest a stimulant, your brain has to do something with it. And it's like, okay, what do we do? Like, what's the first thing? Like, oh, okay, there's something at work. Like, let's think about that, you know? And automatically you're down that road. But if there's, the absence of a stimulant, if you're just completely natural, then you are taking, you're being more passive with your environment and kind of just taking things in as they come and thinking about them. And hey, maybe if a thought does come about work, it's like, okay, I guess we are accepting that and thinking about it now, which probably is that, which means, or it probably explains why your meditation's been better, right? Because isn't that, I mean, I meditate every now and then, not nearly as much as you, but isn't that kind of the whole point, is to try to, accept thoughts as they come, like a river passing by, as they say, and
basically.
kind of, yeah.
I think I can notice in my mind when I'm meditating, when I say that my meditation is not as still, maybe I'll use that word. It's usually because I'm trying to solve some problem in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking about a relationship, either it's professional or personal, or I'm thinking about work in some way, and I'm solving problems in my mind in the future in my meditation. And that's like, I think about it back to what we were talking about with ritual. A lot of times in the morning when I take my coffee out, I open up my laptop.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know I'm about to get like 1 hour of like pure focus, and I should use that.
Right. No, that's interesting. I for the past probably couple of years, I've been forcing myself to not look at anything work related when I get up. And it's so hard. It's so like embarrassingly hard actually, because you're like this isn't your whole life, this is something that you do during your life. Like you can take, I wake up early too. So I get up at like probably 6 a.m. and don't really start working until 8:30 or 9. So for me, it's really a struggle to not like just immediately open my email and see what I missed. And I think usually coffee, like you said, like you have that in your brain's like, okay, let's go, let's do something now. That's definitely made it easier with that, at least, practice I'm trying to do.
You mean like you've had an easier time in that first 3-hour window, not just like immediately clinging to the work?
Right.
What's been your experience instead?
Well, in the beginning, it was mostly just like, I wish I had some coffee right now. And it was like super foggy for sure. The wake up, the whole like wake up experience has lengthened like quite a bit. And it's made me realize that like your state from like sleeping to waking is not supposed to be so like immediate. Because I would, my wife Shelby makes coffee at night before we go to bed. So she'll make it. I'm usually up first. I'll hit the button. It's ready in like 5 minutes. And like, basically I'm drinking coffee is like right after I wake up, and it's like kind of flip that switch to waking. And now I've noticed like, oh, okay, that process is actually a lot longer than I thought. And like, there's this middle time, I don't know, it's like some in-between area where you're obviously not sleeping, but you're not fully alert and awake, and you're kind of in this weird zone where you're coming to terms with like the day, like things you got to do. If I made plans to like work out in the morning or something like that, it would be like kind of preparing for that and getting my mind focused on that. But it was so much more gradual, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I'm thinking about like the actual brainwave activity as you're speaking about that, because I don't really know the names particularly. I think in like day-to-day life when we're working and functioning, we're in like beta or gamma waves. And
Mm,
then when we're going to sleep, I think we're going to like a delta state. And you might have to check those the names, but basically your brainwaves speed up when you're functioning, and then as you're going to sleep or meditating, they're slowing down. So I'm thinking about in that in-between state, right when you're falling asleep, there's like that in-between state.
yep.
That's your brain waves slowing down, but they haven't fully slowed down to where you're sleeping. And that happens, and I'm very much aware of that when I'm going to sleep. Like I can be consciously aware of being in that in-between state, but I'm not as aware of it in the morning. And that's when you say that, it makes me think of the brain waves going in the other direction. Like they're
Yeah.
starting to ramp up for the day. But if you immediately drink a coffee, you take away the body's organic process of speeding
Yeah.
up.
Right. Yeah. You're electrocuting everything. It's like you're just hitting like the NOS button
Yeah.
from Fast and Furious.
Right. And it's like as soon as we wake up, and it's so ingrained in the culture that, I mean, when I tell people around my life that I've been doing this, they're like, how are you
Right.
functioning? How are you,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And I'm like, wow, this is pervasive, this drug addiction.
Oh, it's crazy. The same thing. I talk to people and they're like, yeah, I can never do that. I'm just like, wow. Like that's like you're a human. Like you have to be able to do that. Like
Yeah.
we, we evolved for like hundreds of thousands of years doing this.
Yeah, I think it's like, that's the other thing. We're giving so much power as a culture to the drug of like, I can't, I can't, I can't do that. And not even just on a macro level, like on a personal level. If a person feels they can't, how much power are you going to give away to this
Right.
drug from yourself? Like where does willpower come in?
That's crazy. And that's definitely what I think going back to like why it scared me a little bit in the beginning was I was like, oh man, like essentially my whole life to this point has been built on not built on this drug, but like kind of built like this has been part of the journey every single step of the way. So I was like, man, it's kind of scary to understand what I am without this. And it's enlightening, but it's also, I might have given it a little too much credit in the beginning. Like, of course it's not everything. Of course it's not the reason like you're successful or the reason you've done anything good in your life. But you're like you said, we're all so dependent on it that it's a little bit scary at first to imagine what you would be like without any of it.
I also had a lot of people saying like they I hear a lot of the same thing where it's like, oh, it's not really the caffeine. I just like the taste of the coffee. I really enjoy the taste of the coffee. And
Yeah.
caffeine doesn't really affect me. I could drink a cup of coffee and go to bed. So a lot of people having the same rationalizations, like a group think of similar rationalizations as to why it just doesn't apply to me. This psychoactive stimulant doesn't apply in my chemical makeup.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of one of those people, honestly. Like I was I could drink a cup of coffee after dinner, and like fall asleep the same, and probably wasn't like sleeping very good, but would tell myself that I was. And I kind of do like the taste. Like I tried decaf coffee a few times the past few weeks, and definitely the taste was nice, but I think it was more just like having the ritual. But
So
I mean,
does it taste different?
I think it does a little bit. I think when you have like a good cup of like hot coffee, there's like, black, it's like a little bit bitter.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, and people like sometimes don't like the taste of coffee, but like there's like a sharpness or bitterness to it. I think the decaf coffee is more just kind of like smooth, a little bit more just like kind of like warm drink and less
It
of that
doesn't
bite.
taste as much like electricity.
No, definitely not.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. I had to get that joke in there. What were you going to say?
No, but like you're hinting on this one thing that like I've been thinking about a lot, and it's like, you know, I'm personally am kind of the mindset that it's crazy to me that any drugs are illegal. I kind of like, you know, I follow that kind of that thought that like no one should really be able to tell you what you can or can't put in your body. So that's kind of the side of the spectrum that I lean on. So, but I say that because, you know, you think about everything that is illegal, and it's just crazy that, you know, we just have this one drug, caffeine, that, you know, it's part of our culture now. It's like no one even thinks of it as a drug, of course, but it is, and it's just something that we're allowed to have. And there are, and not only that, but like there's these massive industries built on delivering that drug to us. And that whole concept is kind of blows my mind a little bit. And I get that like caffeine isn't, I mean, it's not like a psychedelic, right? You're not going to get like a DUI for drinking coffee and driving, right? So it's not like inhibitor to life, but it's still certainly psychoactive. And it's just something that we all accept as us as cool. Like, I mean, you can go get it on every street corner, you know?
I was thinking when you were talking about one of the texts I sent you over the past few weeks was, it's a stimulant like cocaine. So the president of Starbucks, who I don't even know who that is, they are a celebrated, probably billionaire at this point.
Right.
And they're probably glorified and, you know, seen as a pinnacle of success. And then you look at somebody who is peddling cocaine, and that is because the government has decided that's illegal. This person is a criminal and they're probably in jail. The person that has sold the most cocaine in the past 20 years is probably in jail. The person who has sold the most coffee is probably on their own private island.
Absolutely.
But they're both people that are just selling stimulants. So that's just like a government decision that one of those is good and one of those is bad.
Yeah, it's that blows my mind. And I don't want to, like, for any of your listeners, don't want to like confuse probably the dangers of cocaine with something like caffeine, but at the end of the day, you know, the effect is not all that different. Although maybe cocaine is probably like magnified, right? But like when you think about the way people use both drugs, I think they're really not that different. Like I don't use cocaine, but like, you know, I would drink coffee before going out at night, let's say, like with the buddies, to like, you know, before we're gonna go, you know, drink or whatever, as like a, hey, let's all like get amped up a little bit before we like go out and enjoy it together. So and and I know people that will use like use cocaine in that way, like even in the mornings, right? And I certainly won't, like, I have no judgment about how anyone uses substances, but they're not all that far off in terms of just pure stimulation. I also started to like think about these brands that, like, you know, these big brands, you said Starbucks, right? Like most of them don't market themselves as caffeine companies. Like they've kind of like created this kind of other image that they put out there, right? Like, so it's like Starbucks, right? It's kind of like that, you know, young, hip, kind of millennial vibe. Like you go to a Starbucks cafe and like you're creating a screenplay or you're reading a book, right? It's like that image in your mind. And you have like Red Bull, you know, it's like Red Bull gives you wings. It's like this active lifestyle, like extreme sports, like, you know, skydiving, stuff like that. We talked about Folgers earlier, right? It's like that. I don't know what, for that one, it's like this wholesome, like family kind of old school kind of American morning type vibe, right? and they've created these images that are not about caffeine, but that's what they are. At the end of the day, there's if you ever drive by a Starbucks, there's always people there, like always. You know, the drive-through lines are like hilarious sometimes. You ever drive? You see them like up and down the turnpike in Jersey or New York, right? Like those rest stops with like 25 cars in the line. So I just thought that was interesting that these companies, industries are just, like you said, making billions and billions of dollars on delivering this drug, but no one really wants to admit it.
Yeah, I guess they're just repackaging it as something else.
Yeah.
I thought about, just while you were saying that, I thought of two things. One was like when we call, if you slaughter a cow and you package it, it's now called steak or hamburger. Like people don't want to call it what it is. It's for branding, like consumption purposes. Let's call it something else.
Right.
Because if we called it slaughtered cow, maybe people wouldn't be eating it as much.
That's so true. That's so true. It almost makes me respect like the brands that make no mistake about it, like 5 Hour Energy, right? Or like Monster, or like I sent you that picture the other day. I was at the gym, right? There's an ad on the wall for like a pre-workout, and it's just like says it right on the label, like stimulant, right? It's like, all right, at least these guys like aren't really lying about what they're doing.
Right.
It's like
because it's just so accepted. It's so accepted in the culture that we're all just functioning on stimulants that it's like, here it is. Here's your drug. Come take it. It makes me think about sleep. So how has your sleep been?
I think it's been getting better. It was bad at first. It was bad at first for sure. I've never had a problem falling asleep, but I was definitely having trouble staying asleep. Like just waking up in like the early morning hours and not like feeling great, and then kind of not really falling asleep real well. But I think it's been improving. What about you?
Yeah, same thing. The first 2 weeks it got worse before it got better, but lately it's been better. Sleeping, it feels more enriching, like revitalizing. The sleep that I am getting is better sleep. And there's some science behind like what's happening in the brain actually when you go to sleep with caffeine in your system. And I know that like you won't get to a full REM state, or maybe that's alcohol. But anyway, there's something something chemically going on when you take this caffeine before bed. You just won't, scientifically speaking, you just won't sleep as well.
Oh yeah.
And I feel that more recently. What we probably got about 5 or 10 minutes left. So as a way for us to wrap up, what are your thoughts on going forward? Like, will you go back to drinking caffeine? Do you have an opinion on that at this point?
Yeah, it keeps evolving. Like in the beginning, I was like, I can't wait for this to be over. And then this kind of week, it's been more like, okay, like I'm feeling a little bit more at peace with this. Michael Pollan in that podcast mentioned that he went back and started drinking it on the weekends only to start. And I think that would be interesting, given like, I told you already, like I feel like my relationship with caffeine is different on the weekends. So I think I'll definitely do that. And I'll admit, like, I love it. Like caffeine, like, we this whole conversation is about how like it's crazy that this is legal, and it feels like a negative connotation, but I think I love caffeine. It's great.
Yeah, I'm pumped it's legal.
So I think I will go back, but I do think it might be a little bit more thoughtful. And I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do it, but I definitely like the idea of like the intermittent fasting with caffeine and maybe starting out with like weekends, you know?
I haven't really decided yet. I think what I'm going to do for the next 30 days is I bought this new, it's called like 8 mushrooms. I bought this new like mushroom blend. I have the type of mushrooms that are in it. Lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, chaga, cordyceps. And I've been researching some of like the health benefits of this stuff, and it's like super drugs. Like
Yeah.
every single mushroom is anti-inflammatory, could help fight cancer, all these different things. It helps with your gut, your generally revitalization in your body. It enhances performance and focus. So what I'm going to do is drink this, starting probably tomorrow, drink this 8 mushroom tea for the next 30 days and sort of document that within myself and see. But then it makes me think like, am I just replacing one substance for another? And um, is that any different? This substance that I've ground up and put into water makes me feel focused also. Why is that any different?
I think that's totally fair. My whenever I get to that point, I think it's for me, it always comes back to the relationship you have with the substance. Like I'm a fan of substances. Like and I think it's just all about how you use them. Like this whole thing has been helpful for me to understand like how I use caffeine. Before it was just like something I did and never even thought about it. And now I'm like, okay, this is something I'm doing. I need to be a little bit more thoughtful, like how it makes me treat other people, how it affects my anxiety, all that sort of thing. And I think that's true for anything, alcohol, marijuana, even like cocaine or whatever else people like to do. I think you can't, I don't know. You should always be conscious of how you relate to the substance and not just something that you're doing and as a habit, I guess, is when it becomes different. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, I guess the name of the podcast is Wondering Together, a mindfulness podcast. And I think what you're talking about is having a mindful relationship to, which I never really thought about it in this way. Like I think about mindful relationship to work, to my wife, to my friends, to things that I'm in relationship with, including myself. But what about substances? So looking at the relationship to substances as well. I'm just realizing now that this cup I've been drinking out of, this is water in here, I promise. It's got a coffee cup on it with like steam and all that. I'm drinking water. But what was I saying?
Like mindful relationship with things.
Like the relationship to it. And there's a lot more I would want to say about that, but 2 things. 1, I'll ask you a question, and 2, I would want to just ask for some closing thoughts. My question is, should we do that episode that I was speaking about where we both get like a triple espresso or something that's like an intense amount of caffeine and drink it while doing an episode? I feel like that might be an interesting thing to document and capture.
I'm down. I definitely want to try it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll do that. And then my other thought is just like, what are your closing thoughts on this? Like, what would you say to the people listening about this experiment? Should they do it? Why should they do it? Should they not do it? Like, what are your closing thoughts?
I definitely, so I would recommend for anyone listening to always be conscious of what you're putting in your body and how you're treating it. And like you were just saying, having a mindful relationship with all substances and everything you're doing, not just caffeine, right? Like personally, I like to be sober for times and just reset the body that way and feel like how I'm relating to anything. We're doing this with caffeine now. I'll do that with certain like exercise modalities as well. You know, like sometimes I'll get into like specific types of cardio. Like right now, I've been doing a lot of boxing for some reason, right? I'm really trying to understand like how that form of exercise, like, affects my body, my mind state, and you can apply that to anything else. Like me, I like to play a lot of golf too, right? Like I'll take time off that too to see how I react. So, but my recommendation is for people to always be experimenting that way, and really try to be mindful about how it's affecting your your outlook on the world, and the way you treat people, and obviously the way you feel personally. So
I like that. I'm thinking about what my next one will be. I'm gonna try the mushroom tea, but I also
yeah,
maybe we'll come up with another experiment then we'll do it together. But
I'm down.
for today, we're out of time, so I'm gonna end the recording. Thanks everybody for listening. But Ellis, hang out for a minute. Stop.